such a beautiful gift from God. But what happens when that same love turns into sleepless nights, conflict and pain? For Brigitte, it's more than a feeling. She's torn between two men, two worlds. One, tied to her past and the memories they once built. The other, a flame rekindled, his motives uncertain. Yet he's willing to fight for her heart. But how can she know who truly loves her? This isn't just a love story. It's a story of choices, sacrifice, and the price of following your heart. Let's begin. Brigitte unlocked the apartment door with a soft smile, the small gift bag swinging at her side. She had cancelled a company trip she'd been dreaming of for months, just to be here, just to surprise Bram on his birthday. But the moment she stepped inside, the silence pressed against her. Too heavy, too still. Something wasn't right. Then came the sound. A muffled laugh, a moan, low but sharp enough to slice through her chest. Her body moved on its own, her steps echoing down the hallway, each one heavier than the last. Her hand trembled on the bedroom door. She pushed it open, and her world shattered. Bram was in bed with another woman, their bodies tangled in the sheets, skin against skin. The woman's laugh, cruel and victorious, rang out like broken glass. The gift bag slipped from Brigitte's hand. It hit the floor with a dull thud, the photo frame inside cracking on impact. Bram jumped up, fumbling for words. "Brigitte, wait. It's not what it looks like." Her voice shook, but her words cut deep. "Not what it looks like. You said that after Sophia, after Letitia, and the other girl I don't even remember anymore." Bram dragged a hand through his hair, sighing as if bored. "It won't happen again. You weren't around and You weren't around." Her voice cracked into fury. "That's your excuse? Again?" The woman only laughed louder, mocking the pain in her eyes. Brigitte's tears spilled as she ripped the ring from her finger. She hurled it to the floor. "We're done. The engagement is over." She turned and ran, the slam of the door shaking the walls. Bram stood in the wreckage of the moment, muttering to himself, "She's just overreacting." On the floor, the broken frame lay in pieces, two smiling faces trapped forever behind shattered glass. Brigitte storms out of Bram's mansion, her engagement ring no longer weighing down her finger. Her hands are trembling, her mascara streaked, her breath sharp and uneven. The night air hits her face, cold and biting, but it doesn't soothe her. If anything, it makes the cracks in her heart feel wider. She should go home. She should curl up and cry it out. But instead, her feet carry her into the neon haze of the city streets, where noise drowns out thought, and strangers don't ask questions. Brigitte doesn't drink. She's always hated the taste of alcohol, but tonight none of that matters. Tonight she wants to drown, to burn away the memory, to be anywhere but trapped inside her own mind. A flickering red bar sign catches her eye. The sound of music, laughter and glass colliding spills into the street. Without thinking, she pushes through the heavy door. The smell of liquor and cigarettes hits her, wrapping her in a haze she doesn't resist. She slides onto a stool at the counter, her swollen eyes avoiding the curious stares around her. When the bartender leans in, she doesn't hesitate. Something strong. The first shot burns like fire, making her cough. She wipes her mouth, forces it down, and motions for another, and another. Each sip promises to numb her pain, but the ache only digs deeper, heavier, harder to ignore. Men begin to notice, the sharp-suited banker in the corner, the scruffy guy with too much cologne. Their stares linger too long, their smirks too knowing, but Brigitte doesn't care. She keeps drinking, trying to fill the emptiness with fire. The glass trembles in her hand. Her blurred eyes reflect the neon glow. A broken laugh slips out of her lips before it crumbles into another wave of tears. This isn't a woman drinking for fun. This is a woman unraveling. The whiskey glass trembled in Brigitte's hand, half empty and haloed by barlight. Her head rested on her palm. Her eyes were glossy, not from drink but from memory. a reel of small betrayals playing behind her lids. She saw Bram at a gala, arm warm around her waist, as he whispered promises that later turned thin. She saw that same arm pull away the moment a prettier woman passed. She saw herself waiting in a car outside his office, hours wasted, while he stepped out laughing with Sophia. She saw the night she stayed up planning his birthday while he texted under the table, pain knotted in her chest. She swallowed another mouthful, hoping the burn would erase the ache, but the taste only steadied the truth. It wouldn't. A man eased onto the stool beside her, mid-30s, slick hair, a smile too practiced, cologne loud enough to be heard. He watched her like a buyer browsing glass. He offered company, in a voice that slid too smoothly across the room. She didn't answer. She only signaled for another drink, because anything that kept her from thinking sounded like mercy. He bought it for her. While the bartender's back was turned, his hand moved like a shadow, a small white pill, a practiced flick, the pill disappearing into amber. He stirred with the straw as if stirring a drink, not a plan. He pushed the glass forward and smiled. "This will make you forget," the smile said without words. Brigitte looked at the liquid, at the invisible threat dissolving inside it. Her hand hovered over the rim, fingers trembling. Images and faces collided in her vision. Bram's grin, the man's slick face, the glass shimmering. Maybe forgetting would be easier, she thought. Maybe forgetting would stop the ache. She brought the glass closer, lips parted, and somewhere across the bar, a pair of eyes that had seen her before narrowed and rose to meet hers. The glass trembled at Brigitte's lips, a fragile, bright circle in the dim bar. Her vision blurred. The world narrowed to amber liquid and the steady thump of her own heartbeat. Across the room, a pair of eyes watched. Cormac, half hidden in shadow, papers spread at his table, a forgotten drink beside him. He had been there an hour, but when the slick man at the stool slipped something into Brigitte's glass, his attention snapped. He had seen that move before. He rose so calmly it almost didn't register, the scrape of his chair a small signal the room barely noticed. He crossed the floor with a deliberate quiet that made people look up without knowing why. Just as Brigitte tilted the glass, a firm hand covered hers and steadied the drink. A voice, low and controlled, said enough to stop the man in his tracks. The slick smile faltered. For a heartbeat, the bar held its breath. Cormac set the glass down, never taking his eyes off her. He told the man, without theatrics, that this was a crime and he would call the police if anything else happened. The threat landed like a stone. The man swallowed, muttered something about leaving, and melted back into the crowd. Brigitte sat very still, the aftershocks of shock and shame washing over her. When she looked up through the fog in her head, she recognized him, Cormac. Older, quieter, harder around the edges, but the same man who had once stepped between her and the world. Recognition flickered between them like an old light. Cormac signaled for water, helped her steady herself, and for a moment his voice softened. He reminded her, not with pity, but with the dry comfort of someone who knew her too well, that she'd always needed a lifeline. Outside the bar, the city breathed on. Inside, Brigitte felt the first real safe space she'd had all night, and somewhere beneath that safety, a question was beginning to stir. Cormac steadied Brigitte as they stepped out of the bar, the heavy door shutting behind them. The night air bit against her skin, sharp and cold, but it did little to clear the fog in her head. Her steps wavered, her breath uneven, her mascara smudged into shadows under her eyes. "Easy," he muttered, his hand firm at her elbow, guiding her away from the noise. She pulled back slightly, blinking up at him, her voice thick with hurt and suspicion. Why would you even bother helping me?" For a moment he didn't answer. His jaw clenched, his eyes searching hers like he was weighing whether the truth was worth speaking. Then, finally, his voice came low, heavy with something that sounded almost like memory. "Because you've always needed a lifeline." Brigitte frowned, confusion cutting through her haze. He met her gaze, steady now. "College, remember, when those rich brats cornered you, mocking your clothes, your family. You were the brightest in our year, Brigitte, but still, you needed saving. Her lips parted as the memory struck. That night years ago, her tears hot against her cheeks as cruel laughter echoed around her. And then Cormac, stepping in, breaking through the circle like a storm. A protector. A lifeline. She blinked hard, shaking her head as if to push the past away. Her voice trembled. That was years ago. Why are you even here now, Cormac? But before he could answer, his body went still. His eyes froze on the street just beyond her shoulder. Eleanor. She appeared like she owned the night. Elegant, untouchable. Her designer heels clicked softly against the pavement. Her hand looped through Cillian's arm. She laughed, the sound light and practiced as he leaned in to kiss her cheek. Together, they looked perfect, polished, golden. Everything Cormac had once chased and never truly held. His chest tightened. The old sting rushed back like fresh poison, jealousy twisting inside him before he could swallow it down. He knew what would happen if Eleanor saw him like this, standing in the street with Brigitte, the faint wobble in her stance, betraying how much she'd had to drink. Eleanor would see. She would know. She would see the ghost of him still wanting her. Panic flared. Without thought, Cormac's hand rose, cupping Brigitte's face. His lips crashed onto hers. Brigitte's eyes flew wide, her body stiffening against him. The kiss was sudden, sharp, desperate. And yet he held it, clinging to the illusion, hiding his turmoil in the only shield he could find. Eleanor stopped mid-step. Her smile faltered, her gaze locking onto them. Cillian, too busy whispering something in her ear, didn't notice, but Eleanor did. She saw everything. Brigitte shoved against Cormac's chest, breaking free, breathless and furious. "What the hell was that?" He didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on Eleanor, watching as her lips pressed thin, her hand tightening around Cillian's arm before she turned her face away. The damage was done. Brigitte's glare burned into him, her voice breaking with anger. "You used me." Cormac's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence was confession enough. Outside the bar, the night pressed down heavy, the neon glow painting the pavement in fractured colors. Brigitte stood rigid, her chest rising and falling too fast, her eyes still glassy from both tears and the single drink. She spun on Cormac, her voice cracking, but her pride holding firm. She demanded to know why he had kissed her inside, why he had dared to use her like that without her consent. Before Cormac could even form an answer, a mocking laugh cut through the cold. Eleanor. She approached like a storm dressed in silk, her designer heels clicking sharp against the street, her arm hooked tightly around Cillian's. She glowed with practiced confidence, her gaze locked on Cormac, cruel and satisfied. "Cormac," she sneered, dragging out his name as if it were poison. "Not even weeks since I dropped you and already you're sniffing around scraps? And this scrap?" Her eyes flicked over Brigitte, dripping disdain. "She isn't even interested in you." Pitiful. Brigitte froze, her pride pierced. Cormac's jaw clenched, every muscle in his body tight with the urge to fight back. But he didn't. He stood there, wounded in silence. Eleanor smirked, twisting the knife deeper. "Honestly, leaving you was the smartest decision I ever made. You never had anything of your own, Cormac. Just a shadow, living off my family's generosity. And now look at you. Desperate, clinging to gutter trash." Cormac flinched. Brigitte saw it, the wound sink deep, and something inside her snapped. Her voice came out steady, sharp as glass. "Funny, Eleanor. If you're really over him, why are you here, obsessed with who he kisses? You're the desperate one, not me. And whether you like it or not, this so-called gutter trash is the one standing by him now, not you." For the first time, Eleanor's perfect smile faltered. She scoffed, tossing her hair, ready to recover, but Brigitte didn't give her the chance. Her hand shot up, gripping Cormac's collar. Before he could even react, she pulled him into a kiss. Fierce, deliberate, defiant. Cormac froze, stunned, his eyes wide, his hands half raised, but Brigitte held on, pouring her fury into the moment. A kiss, not born from love, but from fire. A slap aimed straight at Eleanor's pride. When she finally tore away, her breath trembled against the cold. She glared at Eleanor, her words cutting clean. "So go back to your arm candy and stay out of our lives. Cormac isn't yours anymore, not even in memory." The mask cracked. Eleanor's face hardened, her eyes glassy with a wound she couldn't disguise. She forced a brittle laugh, tugged Cillian closer, and spat over her shoulder. "Keep him. Enjoy my leftovers." Then she turned, her heels clicking faster than before, her stiff posture betraying the bruise to her ego. The street fell quiet again. Brigitta's chest heaved from the adrenaline, her pulse pounding like war drums. Cormac stood frozen, his mind racing, his lips still burning from what had just happened. The air between them was thick, electric, alive. For a long moment, neither spoke. Both knew something had shifted, something neither of them could take back. For a long moment after Eleanor storms off, silence clings between them. Brigitta folds her arms, still stung by the kiss she impulsively gave, still angry at herself for wanting it. Cormac exhales first, breaking the weight in the air. "Didn't see that coming," he says quietly, lips tugging into a half smile. "Guess I owe you thanks. You saved me when I probably didn't deserve it." Brigitta shoots him a side glance. "You're welcome, but don't think I did it for you." He chuckles, rubbing the back of his neck. "Fair enough. Honestly, I just didn't want Eleanor to eat me alive. She's got sharper teeth than a great white." The joke falls flat. Brigitta nudges him with her elbow anyway. "That's the worst joke I've ever heard." "At least you're laughing," he says, grinning. "That's better than glaring." Her lips twitch despite herself, but then her voice lowers. "So, what happened with you and Eleanor?" The smile fades from his face. His eyes turn distant, shadowed. "I met her at a gala, champagne, bright lights, the whole scene. She walked in, and for me, the world just stopped. I fell hard. For a while, it felt like a dream." His tone darkens. "Problem was, she wasn't over Cillian. Not even close." He leans back against the wall, his voice heavy with memory. "I stayed anyway. 2 years of trying to be enough. Flowers, surprises, sacrifices. But it didn't matter. She accused me of using her for her money. And maybe she wasn't wrong. I didn't have much, still don't. I thought if I just held on, she'd see me, my worth, my dreams. But she never did. I was only ever a stand-in for him. So I walked away." The bitterness in his laugh says the rest. Brigitta's chest aches. She sees herself in his words. Her voice trembles as she speaks. "I know what that's like. To love someone who only takes." Cormac turns to her, but she looks away, her eyes shining. "Bram was my everything," she whispers. "My college sweetheart. The golden boy, rich, charming, untouchable, and me? I thought being smart was enough. I mistook attention for love, gifts for devotion, and I gave him everything. Too much." Her throat tightens as tears gather. The lies started small, then the cheating. Sophia, Letitia, names I wish I could forget. He denied, twisted, even blamed the devil, and I forgave him every single time. He'd buy me something pretty and I'd stay. Not for the money, but because I didn't know how to live without him. Her voice cracks. He even slept with my co-worker. I swore I'd leave. But he begged, he promised. He even proposed, and I believed him. Tonight, on his birthday, I found him in bed with someone else. The sob escapes before she can stop it. Her whole body trembles. Cormac stands silent, struck by the weight of her pain. He had no cure for her heartbreak, but he gave her truth. In his eyes, Bram wasn't powerful or enviable. He was a fool, a man blind enough to lose what others would fight to keep. Her sob broke into a fragile laugh. Cormac shifted, determined to cut through the sorrow. His tone changed, brighter, alive with fire. He spoke of his dream, his project. Years of work poured into a design that could help RasX, America's leader in space exploration, build ships faster, stronger, more reliable than ever before. It could change the future. All he needed was the right chance. As he spoke, his eyes lit up, passion burning brighter than pain. And for the first time that night, Brigitta looked at him not with pity, but with wonder. Brigitta sat in silence after his words faded. His dream lingered between them, bold, impossible, reckless even. And yet, the fire in his eyes made it feel alive, as if the future itself had bent closer to listen. She drew a steady breath. Then she told him she would help, not because she pitied him, not because she needed saving, but because she believed in the project. She believed in him. Her mind drifted back to her own beginning, fresh out of college, nothing but an intern lost in the endless halls of a chemical firm. She had been invisible then, working twice as hard just to be noticed, clawing her way for every sliver of recognition. Inch by inch she climbed, until her name meant something, until her voice could shape decisions. If anyone could place his proposal into the right hands, it was her. Cormac blinked, stunned. For a moment he simply stared, as if her words were a language he didn't understand. Then disbelief cracked into gratitude. His smile trembled with relief, his eyes shining with awe, like a man who had been pulled from the deep when he was sure he would drown. He thanked her, again and again, his voice rough with sincerity. The night had grown cold by the time they left the bar. He walked her to the tall apartment building where she lived, the city humming quietly around them. At the door, they agreed to meet again, next weekend at a small cafe to begin mapping it all out. As she disappeared inside, Cormac lingered on the sidewalk, hands shoved in his pockets. His gaze lifted to her window, where a faint light flickered on. And for the first time in years, hope felt real. The weekend arrived, and the little cafe on the corner became the stage for something neither Brigitte nor Cormac had planned. They sat shoulder to shoulder, leaning over papers and diagrams, voices low, alive with the hum of possibility. To anyone watching, it might have looked like a date. To Bram, who had just walked in, it looked like betrayal. His eyes narrowed, that smug curl of a smile tugging at his lips. Without hesitation, he strode across the room. "Brigitte," he said loudly, making sure every ear could hear. "So, this is it? Trying to crawl back to me? Cute, but it won't work." She froze, faces turned. The cafe went silent. Bram leaned closer, his sneer cutting. "I'll admit I made a mistake, I cheated. But let's be honest, it wasn't really my fault. I'm Bram, heir to more wealth than you could ever imagine. And you, what are you without me? Nothing. Another girl clawing her way through scraps. You need me. Without me, you're nothing." The words pierced her chest. Brigitte's breath shook. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Do you have any idea what I gave up for you? I cancelled the trip I dreamed about just to make you happy. I did everything to keep you, and you still—" But Bram only smirked wider. "Oh, please, don't pretend you did it for love. You wanted the ring. You wanted my money. But don't worry, I don't hold it against you. The cruelty was deliberate. It was meant to crush her." Then another voice cut through. "Bram." A woman appeared at his side, sharp suit, red lips, confidence dripping like perfume. She slid an arm around his neck, kissed him deep, then eyed Brigitte and Cormac with playful disdain. "Why are you standing at their table?" For once, Bram had no smirk. Cormac rose. His chair scraped against the floor, steady, deliberate. His eyes locked on Bram, jaw set, voice low but razor sharp. "You really are the stupidest man alive." Bram stiffened. Cormac stepped closer, pointing to Brigitte. "You had gold in your hands, rare, precious, irreplaceable, and you were too blind to see it. She gave you loyalty, sacrifice, love, and all you gave her were chains. You never loved her. You loved owning her. A real man knows the worth of a real woman, not one who spreads himself thin, sticking himself in every hole he sees." The cafe gasped. Brigitte's eyes widened. Bram's face burned crimson. Cormac didn't hesitate. He turned, cupped Brigitte's face, and kissed her. Fierce, unflinching, public. The room erupted in whispers. Bram lunged, rage boiling over. But Cormac met him with a clean, brutal punch. One strike. Bram stumbled back, stunned, humiliated. Cormac straightened, calm as stone. He reached for Brigitte's hand and walked her to the door. Together, they stepped into the street like a couple declaring war on the world. Outside, Brigitte's chest heaved. her heart still racing. Her voice trembled. "Thank you for standing up for me." Cormac's lips curved into a smirk. "Don't fall in love with me, Brigitte. I just wanted to help." Her breath caught between gratitude and confusion. He only chuckled, mocking the fire he himself had lit, and kept walking. Behind them, Bram sat frozen in disbelief. For the first time in his life, he realized someone had fought for the woman he had carelessly destroyed. The days that followed brought them closer than either had planned. Brigitte kept her promise. She moved through her network like a quiet force, making sure Cormac's Rus-X proposal landed on the desks that mattered. At first, it was just work, just a favor. But soon work was no longer enough to explain why she stayed. Even after long hours at her firm, she found herself back at his apartment or at the cafe, bent over diagrams, sketching out plans, their voices filling the night. Weekends blurred into sessions of coffee, reports, and laughter breaking through serious talk. And in those hours, something shifted. Their conversations wandered beyond the project. He spoke of childhood nights filled with hunger and fragile dreams. She listened, her chest tightening at the raw honesty. And in return, she opened up about her own battles, fighting to be seen, to be taken seriously, to prove her worth. Respect began to grow into warmth, and warmth slipped into something more. Cormac found himself smiling when her name lit up his phone. Meetings became less about work and more about her. And Brigitte? She caught herself going out of her way just to make him laugh, just to keep his eyes on her a little longer. The line between partnership and something deeper was blurring, but neither of them tried to stop it. They didn't want to. What had started as collaboration was quietly becoming the beginning of something else. Something neither of them had dared to expect. Bram Jones had always believed himself untouchable. The golden boy, the heir, the man who could do no wrong. But life has a cruel way of humbling the arrogant. His downfall came not in whispers, but under blinding lights, on live television. Maris, his glamorous new girlfriend, adored by millions, was asked a simple question. "How's your love life?" Her answer cut like a blade. With a laugh, she called Bram cheap. A man who slept with anything that moved, a man too insecure to stand on his own. Then, with a cruel smile, she revealed his family's secret, that his father planned to hand the empire not to Bram, but to Rowan, his younger, more reliable brother. The clip went viral. Overnight, Bram became the punchline of every cruel joke, the headline of every gossip feed, and when his father's voice thundered, "You've embarrassed this family enough," it was the final blow. For the first time, Bram stood in the ruins of his own making. And when the dust settled, his mind drifted to Brigitte, the woman who had once loved him despite his arrogance, the woman who forgave too much, the woman who had chosen him, not his money. He began to tell himself she had been his only real anchor, maybe even the only one who truly loved him. One evening he went looking for her, perhaps to beg, perhaps to reclaim what he thought he had lost. But what he saw stopped him cold. Outside her building, Brigitte stood with Cormac. They were laughing, their voices soft against the night. She looked lighter, freer than she had ever been with him. And Cormac, who had none of Bram's money or power, had something Bram believed was his by right. The sight seared him. What filled Bram wasn't love. It was rage. It was pride. It was the unbearable truth that Brigitte was thriving without him, that someone else was giving her the happiness he never could. And in that moment, Bram made a vow. He would get her back. Not out of love, never love. But because losing her to Cormac felt like the greatest insult of all. But it wasn't only Bram's world collapsing. Eleanor's perfect life was also beginning to rot from the inside. At first, the cracks were small, papers missing, odd transfers, deals she didn't remember authorizing. And then, the truth hit like a wrecking ball. Cillian wasn't the man she thought he was. The polished suit, the charm, the confidence. It was all a mask. Behind it stood a con man. He had used her name, her influence, her family's legacy, twisting them into shady business deals she knew nothing about. Worse, the assets her family had entrusted to her, the honor she was meant to protect, he had been quietly selling off piece by piece to pay debts she never knew existed. And when the mask finally dropped, she saw it clearly. Cillian had never loved her. He had only loved her money, her power, what she could give him. The realization cut deep. Eleanor, the girl who always prided herself on control, had been played, used, humiliated. Alone in her room, memories clawed their way back. Cormac. The quiet dinners he had cooked after her long days. The small gifts, bought with money he barely had, but given with a heart full of love. The dates he had planned so carefully, the ones she had skipped because Cillian had called. Cormac had loved her, truly, fully, and she had dismissed him, accused him, humiliated him. She had traded substance for shine, and in the end, been left with nothing but ashes. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt it, the crushing weight of regret. She had fumbled love, real love, and deep down, she knew she might never get it back. Cormac didn't mean to stare. It started as a stray look, then another. The way Brigitta's hair fell across her face, the quick flare of laugh that cut through his tension, the fierce light in her eyes when she explained something she loved. Each moment was a quiet risk. Each moment drew him closer. One afternoon she caught him mid-gaze. Her smile was teasing, gentle, a question without words. He froze, the truth almost slipping out. Yes, he thought, yes, of course. Fear stopped him. Eleanor's shadow still sat heavy on his chest. Love had once been his ruin, and he had promised himself never to fall that way again. So he did what he always did when he was afraid. He hid. He turned the moment into a joke, laughed too quick, pushed the truth away with a smirk. Then he said what he always said when he felt vulnerable. Don't fall for me. Love is a weakness he could not afford. The words landed like walls. They sounded certain, but inside him they cracked. Brigitta smiled and looked away, small and steady, but something inside her shifted. A little piece of hope broke. She had wanted him to meet her halfway, and instead he backed away. They both felt it, the silent ache that followed a missed chance. He was already hers in ways he would not admit. She was already his in ways neither of them would name. And between them, something fragile and dangerous began to settle. A love unspoken, waiting for courage. The morning the headlines broke, Cormac's life changed forever. Cormac Hayes, the new face of innovation. Ras X had chosen his design. The dream he had carried in silence for years was now a billion-dollar reality. At the press conference, cameras blinded him. Questions flew like sparks. Yet his voice was steady when he spoke the only truth that mattered. This isn't just my victory, it's Brigitta's too. She believed when no one else did. She's my partner in every sense of the word. Her name carried across the room, heavy with honor. For Brigitta it was overwhelming. She had given her nights, her weekends, her heart to this work. Watching him stand there, radiant with triumph, felt like watching someone you love finally touch the stars. But under the glow of success, a shadow moved. This was no longer late nights at a small apartment or quiet mornings at a cafe. This was contracts, teams, boardrooms, a machine too large for intimacy. And as Cormac rose higher, the hours she had once claimed of him slipped away. She smiled for the cameras, proud at his side. But inside, fear pressed on her heart. Because the last thing still binding them wasn't the project. It was the one thing he still refused to admit, what he felt for her. And Brigitta wondered, as his star climbed higher, would he ever allow himself to fall? Success had cast Brigitta in a new light, and Bram Jones could not look away. Every headline that praised Cormac Hayes carried her name beside his. Every photograph showed her standing tall at his side, and every smile she gave that wasn't his carved deeper into his pride until it bled. So Bram did what he had always done. He tried to win her back with grand gestures. He stormed into her office with roses and hollow speeches about eternal love. He stood outside her apartment at midnight, shouting to the neighbors and the stars that she was his one true soulmate, that he had changed, that losing her had opened his eyes. But Brigitta's eyes no longer saw him the way they once had. She had lived this cycle before. The gifts, the apologies, the promises that broke faster than they were spoken. This time her voice was cold, steady, final. "No, Bram. I'm done being a chapter in your ego. You never loved me. You only loved the way I made you feel about yourself." Her rejection sliced deeper than any insult. But instead of healing, the wound festered, and his eyes turned to the man who now stood where he once had. Cormac Hayes, the dreamer, the rising star, the rival. Jealousy hardened into obsession. If Brigitta would not return to him, it was because of Cormac. And so Bram sharpened a new weapon, not roses, not apologies, but ruin. He whispered in boardrooms. He leaked lies to the press. He painted Cormac as a fraud, a con artist who had seduced Brigitta only to exploit her connections. For Bram, this was no longer about love. This was war. Bram played his hand like a master of poison. The first strike came as a leaked article. It claimed Cormac's victory with Ras X hadn't been earned at all, that Brigitta had been the key, the connection, the pawn he had used to climb. Then came the proof. Screenshots, emails, conversations, sliced and twisted, stripped of context. Together they painted a picture so damning it looked undeniable. Cormac Hayes, the fraud, the opportunist, the man who had seduced Brigitta only to turn her into a stepping stone. When Brigitta saw it, her chest tightened. The details were too precise, too sharp to dismiss. Against her will, memories of Bram's betrayals clawed back into her mind, old scars splitting open. She wanted to believe in Cormac. God, she wanted to. But the lies whispered like truths she couldn't silence. That night when Cormac reached for her, she froze. His touch, once her refuge, now felt foreign, staged. His voice, once her anchor, sounded rehearsed, hollow, like lines from a script. Her silence cut deeper than accusation, and when she finally spoke, her words shattered him. "I don't know what's real anymore." Cormac stood there, stunned, as the world tilted under his feet. He didn't understand the sudden distance, the cold walls rising between them. But one truth struck him like a storm. Losing her would destroy him in ways no failure ever could. Success tasted like ash without her. The headlines, the applause, the handshakes, none of it mattered. The world saw a man on top, but inside he was hollow. His apartment told the truth. Once alive with her laughter and late-night ideas, it now echoed with silence. The coffee mugs she left on the counter, the scribbled notes on his drafts, the way her presence once warmed the coldest corners. Every detail whispered her name. Cormac sat in the quiet, and for the first time, let himself admit the truth. He was in love, not the reckless kind that had burned him before, but something deeper, something that terrified him precisely because it was real. He searched for her, but she was gone, out of town, unreachable. And so, with a voice heavy with desperation, he left a message. "Brigitta, what you saw, what you heard, it was Bram. I should have known, I should have protected you. I was blind. I'm sorry. But hear me now. I love you. I wasn't sure before. I was afraid of repeating the pain of my past. But I see it now. With every breath, it's you. It has always been you. Tomorrow is the Ras X anniversary. I'll be there. If you come, if you stand by me again, I'll know there's still a chance. If not, then I'll carry this truth anyway. I love you. I love you with all my heart." His hand trembled as he ended the message. For the first time in his life, his future did not rest on brilliance or contracts. It rested on love. The Ras X anniversary was the crown jewel of the year. Cameras flashed in rapid succession, capturing every glittering guest who stepped through the grand glass doors. Journalists hovered, hungry for quotes. The air buzzed with the hum of wealth, spectacle, and power. Cormac stood at the edge of the stage, adjusting his suit jacket. Tonight was supposed to be his triumph, the recognition of his vision, his breakthrough. But his heart wasn't racing for the award. It was waiting for her, Brigitte. Would she come? He had left everything in that message. His apology, his truth, his love. Now, all he could do was wait. The host called his name. Applause thundered. Cormac stepped forward, the lights catching sharp angles of his face, his stride steady though his chest was unsteady. He accepted the microphone, and then a voice cut through the hall. "You shouldn't be applauding him," gasps rippled. Heads turned, and swaggering down the aisle came Bram Jones, with the arrogance of a man who had never once been told no. His presence was magnetic, disruptive, poison. Cormac's jaw tightened. Bram stormed the stage, snatching the mic with a smirk. "This man is a fraud," he spat. "He didn't earn this. He used Brigitte, manipulated her name, her influence. Without her, he's nothing. He'll always be nothing." The audience murmured, reporters scribbled, cameras flashed harder, but before Cormac could speak, another voice rose from the back. "You're wrong." Firm, clear, unshaken, every head turned. Brigitte. She walked forward, her heels striking against the polished floor, her posture regal, her expression lit with calm fire. Reaching the stage, she faced Bram directly. "Cormac isn't defined by me or by anyone. Yes, I helped him, because I believed in him when you didn't. He didn't use me. He worked beside me. He earned every single piece of this." The hall fell into a charged silence. She turned to the audience. "Bram doesn't care about fairness. He can't stand to see anyone rise without him. He underestimates, he controls, and when he loses that control, he burns everything around him." A sharp gasp swept the room, and in the corner, hidden half behind the curtains, Eleanor watched. A champagne glass trembled in her hand. She saw Cormac stand tall with dignity. She saw Brigitte step forward, not to shame him, but to shield him, to fight for him, and her heart cracked. Tears streaked her face as she remembered the man she had once had, the little gifts he saved to buy, the nights he waited to walk her home, the love he had poured into her when she never poured it back. He had always fought for her love, and now with even greater fire, he was fighting for someone else's. She turned away. For the first time, Eleanor felt the full weight of her choices. She had lost love while chasing shadows. On stage, Cormac's voice broke the silence. His eyes found Brigitte's. The world fell away. "You were right," he said softly, the words carrying through the mic. "I was afraid of admitting how much you mean to me. But not anymore. Brigitte, I don't need this award, this stage, or this applause. I need you. With every breath, I need you. I love you." A stunned hush swept the hall. Brigitte's lips trembled. For a second, every scar, every doubt pressed against her chest. But then it lifted. She smiled, stepped closer, and whispered, "And I love you too." The hall erupted. Applause thundered louder than anything heard that night. Cameras flared like fireworks. Bram froze in disbelief, fury darkening his face, before storming out to the laughter and whispers that followed him to the door. But Brigitte and Cormac didn't notice. In the middle of the chaos, they leaned into each other, sealing their truth with a kiss. For them, this was no longer about Raz X. This was about a love that had survived betrayal, fear and doubt, and finally found its way home.
I'm really glad you were here for this story and stayed with me through to the end. I'd love to hear what you think about it. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. I always look forward to the stories you share too. The next story I have for you is even more special, and I don't want you to miss it. So make sure you subscribe and tap the notification bell so you'll know the moment it's out. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, may God bless you in all your endeavors. Bye.